편의상 제가 영어로 회의를 진행하도록 하겠습니다. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think one can say that the term FDA has already become a household word in Korea. If it has not, I'm sure definitely it will. Because US-Korea FDA talks will begin very soon. I'm sure you all are aware of the fact that Korea and US will begin FDA trade talks maybe around May after a period of consultation. Korean Minister of Trade and the U.S. Trade Representative announced this Korea-U.S. FDA talks will begin in around May, and it was really, in my view, one of the biggest news in recent years. The U.S. used to be the largest trading partner for Korea for many years. Today, of course, it's only second to China, but it's neck and neck with China. Korea is the seventh largest export market for the United States. Being such a big trading partners, the economic impact on both economies will be substantial. Although people talk about FDA, but to fully understand what FTA will bring about is actually quite difficult. This morning we are very fortunate that U.S. Ambassador to Korea, Alexander Vershbow, is with us to share his views on the U.S.-Korea FTA, its impact on, particularly on the Korean economy from his vantage point. We are all here to listen to his enlightening views on this issue. Ambassador Vershbow came to Seoul not long ago, as you know. He arrived here in October last year, so he's been with us only a few months. So I would like to briefly introduce him to you. Definitely, he has been leading very, very successful and brilliant career in the U.S. Foreign Service. He was educated in Yale University and Columbia University, and he joined the U.S. Foreign Service in the early 70s. Since then, he has been leading very, very brilliant career there. Before he came to Korea, he served in Russia as the U.S. Ambassador to Russia. He also served in the U.S. the President's Office, National Security Council, and also he served in various countries, including NATO. He was a U.S. Ambassador to NATO. And during his services in this post, he had distinguished the achievements there. So he was recognized with various awards. He got awards from American Bar Associations, and he was awarded with the Secretary of State Colin Powell, and he got many awards for his distinguished services for his country in carrying out his duties on this post. we are really looking forward to having him in Korea in strengthening our Korea-US relationship. Particularly if we successfully complete FTA, I'm sure it will become, again, one of his big achievements. Of course, the reward will be on us and the U.S. economy, of course. Well, I don't think I'll waste any more time in telling you what he has achieved. But with this, most importantly, I just want to tell you that he loves music, and he himself is really a good musician, almost professional. So one of these days, if you find him on a stage with a band, don't be surprised. With this, let me welcome Ambassador Vershbow. Please join me in welcome.
Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure for me to be able to meet with the Institute for Global Economics this morning. I heard great things about this organization even before I left Washington to move to Seoul. So my thanks go to Dr. Sak-Hong Yu for offering me this opportunity to speak with you today. As you know, less than 2 weeks ago, U.S. Trade Representative Rob Portman and Korean Trade Minister Kim Kyun-chong announced the launch of free trade agreement negotiations between the United States and Korea. That event marked a major milestone in the history of bilateral relations between our two countries. It also represented a milestone in the development of deeper economic links across the Pacific Ocean between North America and Northeast Asia. Today I'd like to focus primarily on the relationship between trade, liberalization, and economic growth. More specifically, the relationship between the U.S.-Korea FTA and responses to some of the key economic development challenges that are facing Korea at this important juncture in its economic history. Okay, I have enough microphones here. Today is a very important day, certainly for Americans. Today is Valentine's Day. This means I have to remember to pick up some flowers on my way home for my wife, Lisa. But it also means that it's a good day to talk about deepening relationships, whether those are trade and investment relationships or romantic relationships. I was surprised to learn that Valentine's Day actually dates back to pre-Christian Rome and the annual feast of Lupercus. Every Friday during that feast, the names of young maidens were put in a box. Boys would draw out names to decide who would be their girlfriend for the next year, which began in March. The couple would then stay together for a year until the following March. So it's not an exact parallel, obviously, but if we agree on the terms of a free trade agreement, the new economic relationship between Korea and the United States will last much longer than March 2007. But March 2007 is important because it's our rough deadline for completing the negotiations. And our chief negotiators, and one is a boy and the other is a girl, by the way, will be dating frequently over the next few months. Trust me, the selection process for choosing partner nations for U.S.-Korea FTA negotiations was more scientific than drawing names out of a box. So let me address the question of why Korea is an attractive FTA partner for the United States. I'll cite 4 important reasons. First of all, Korea has a large and advanced economy. In fact, Korea is the United States' 7th largest trading partner, with two-way goods trade in 2004 valued at $73 billion. This makes U.S.-Korea FTA our most ambitious FTA undertaking since we began negotiations with Canada and Mexico 15 years ago. So just from a commercial perspective, this is a very big opportunity for both sides. The overwhelming benefits of a U.S.-Korea FTA justify the effort. The latest Korean government research predicts that a U.S.-Korea FTA would increase this country's real GDP by as much as 2%, boost exports to the United States by 15%, and raise manufacturing employment by 6.5%. For the United States, the economic impact is also expected to be significant, around 0.2% of GDP, which is actually a lot for our $11 trillion economy. Now, beyond economics, the second reason why these FTA talks are such a good idea is because Korea is an important ally of the United States and a key geostrategic partner in the Northeast Asian region. Let me read to you from a statement by President Bush that was issued on February 3rd. The President said that the United States and the Republic of Korea have a strong alliance and are bound together by common values and a deep desire to expand freedom, peace, and prosperity throughout Asia and the world. A free trade agreement with the Republic of Korea will provide important economic, political, and strategic benefits to both countries and build on America's engagement in Asia. So, completing a free trade agreement can only make the bilateral U.S.-Korea relationship even stronger. Third, there's an important regional dynamic to a U.S.-Korea FTA. This FTA will help cement trans-Pacific economic ties and add balance to regional economic relations. More than some other Asian nations, Korea seems to have a clear understanding of the importance of Asian nations reaching across the Pacific to forge strong economic ties with North America. From the American perspective, we hope that the U.S.-Korea FTA will further strengthen Korea's leadership role in Northeast Asia. We hope that the increased trade and investment between Korea and the United States resulting from the FTA will help inspire Japan and China to accelerate their own market opening and economic reform. Fourth and finally, looking at Korea's internal economic structure, we hope that a U.S.-Korea FTA will help Korea's reform-minded economic leaders to continue to strengthen the Korean economy through further market opening and economic policy reform. Since the 1997 Asian financial crisis, under strong leadership, Korea has taken a series of important steps to open and reform its economy, steps which have continued to this day. We hope that the FTA talks will provide an important opportunity to lock in and build on these reforms. Now let me spend a little more time discussing this final point, the benefits of the U.S.-Korea FTA in helping to promote economic reform and economic growth in the Republic of Korea. I've titled my address today, A Path to Sustainable Growth. And as indicated by that title, I believe that the U.S.-Korea free trade agreement will help significantly in promoting sustainable economic growth here in South Korea. During his New Year's address on January the 18th, President No first spoke about the U.S.-Korea FTA, saying that, quote, "we should conclude a free trade agreement with the United States for the future of our economy," unquote. Now, this strikes me as a profoundly wise statement. It's important to note the reason the President cites. It's not a short-term vision. President No is talking about making the Korean economy stronger in a lasting way. Amplifying the President's view, Trade Minister Kim Hyun-chong has frequently referred to Korea's FTA with the United States as an invisible infrastructure. His point is that Korea invests heavily and intelligently in physical infrastructure. Similarly, Korea can and should invest in intangible infrastructure, such as by linking the Korean economy more closely to the largest and most advanced economy on the planet, that of the United States. As Minister Kim has said, Korea will learn from the United States, compete with it in some areas, and have the opportunity to grow into a developed economy. Now, I'd like to explore for a moment what are the biggest long-term challenges to sustainable growth for the Korean economy. One challenge is clearly the problem of Korea's rapidly aging labor force and its growing retirement age population. Now, I'm not a professional economist by training, and I expect that most of you in this room could explain this problem more fully than I can. But it's clear even to a layman that when it comes to its aging population, Korea faces a major dilemma. According to some calculations, Korea is experiencing the most rapid decline in fertility rate in any major country, indeed in human history. This will, of course, have a huge impact on social expenditure, the nation's long-term fiscal position, and the composition of the labor force, and also on Korea's general industrial capability. It could even have some impact on Korean culture and society. Basic economic growth theory says that sustained growth will be harder to achieve when the labor force is not growing, following the simple equation of labor growth plus capital plus productivity growth equals total growth. At the same time, social costs could become prohibitively expensive without growth. So what's to be done about the situation? It's not an original argument, but given the finite availability of domestic capital, the key solution must be productivity growth. The goal is to produce more, especially in services, using fewer people. At the same time, the economy should endeavor to attract as much foreign capital as possible. Foreign capital is among the best capital available because, along with cash, it tends to bring and introduce new technologies, both hard technologies and soft technologies such as new business management practices. This is where the U.S.-Korea FTA comes in. We expect that with a U.S.-Korea FTA, we'll see an acceleration of Korean investment in the United States to take advantage of improved business opportunities, but an FTA will also have a profoundly positive impact on foreign investment in Korea, which can provide this country with more advanced jobs and technology. All previous American FTA partners have seen a sharp increase in U.S. direct investment. For example, U.S. investment in Mexico jumped from $4.4 billion before NAFTA to $13.2 billion after NAFTA. Our only other Asia-Pacific FTA partners, Singapore and Australia, also experienced increased inward foreign investment. Now, a second key challenge to the Korean economy in the medium and long term is the problem that is commonly referred to as the polarization of the economy. President No has made this a major theme of his presidency. As he explained in his New Year's speech, the divide between conglomerates and small and medium enterprises and between regular and irregular employees is growing wider. And again, I think the President's analysis is right on the mark. It's quite apparent to most observers that a bifurcation or splitting in two of the Korean economy is becoming increasingly clear. Significantly, as President No said, this is happening on both the business front and the labor front. In business terms, a relatively small group of technologically advanced manufacturing firms, those with the capability of reaching world markets, has enjoyed an immense export boom. That group is investing more overseas, financed by vibrant but narrow corporate bond and stock markets. Meanwhile, a second group of less technologically advanced and more domestically oriented smaller firms is struggling to stay alive while finding it increasingly difficult to attract bank financing. In labor terms, Korea also has an unusual situation, where a relatively small group of workers enjoys both high wages and high job security, while others experience both lower wages and lower job security. Some unionized workers take advantage of their employment at profitable firms to demand wages, rights, benefits, and job security that arguably exceed the increases in their productivity, making it hard for these firms to hire more regular employees. Meanwhile, non-union workers at smaller firms and irregular and temporary workers at large firms are seeing only slow improvement or even declines in their real incomes. So what's to be done in such a situation? Well, it appears to me that the key is to create new growth opportunities in new economic areas, not necessarily manufacturing, but in areas where better investment and employment opportunities can be generated to try to bridge the gap. Here again, I believe there's an important role for the U.S.-Korea FTA in helping to build Korea's invisible infrastructure. Increased foreign investment can play an important role in helping fill gaps in the Korean economy. But the FTA will also help by promoting service sector deregulation, particularly in financial services, but also in other key service sectors. More sophisticated financial services methodologies introduced as a result of deregulation will inevitably help spur the development of venture capital and startups, creating new growth opportunities. In addition, the regulatory transparency provisions of the FTA should help accelerate deregulation of the real or the non-financial economy as well, creating even more avenues for investment and job creation. To some extent, the polarization disparities that are now evident in the Korean economy are the inevitable result of the rapid growth and structural reforms that have already taken place. Some parts of an economy always grow faster than others, and some workers and businesses adjust more quickly than others to changing circumstances. But polarization remains a problem to be addressed, and it's a similar problem, frankly, to what we face in the United States. Rather than trying to force high-performing capital into new segments of the economy, it needs to be lured or attracted into those segments. Investment in the gaps of the economy must be attractive. It cannot be dictated. Certainly no measures should be taken to restrict investment in some areas in order to try to force investment into others. It's also not wise for the government to act as a major financial intermediary. Fortunately, it's clear that the No Moo-hyun administration understands that reform and growth are the ways to deal with the polarization and the aging society dilemmas. The United States is highly pleased and excited that we've been invited to participate in this vision through the pursuit of U.S.-Korea free trade agreement. Now, before I conclude, let me discuss just a bit more the strategic context of the U.S.-Korea FTA talks. Last week, Vice Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-hwan called the FTA talks a bold move to complete Korea's strategic alliance with the United States. And I couldn't agree with him more. Sometimes when things happen gradually, they don't get noticed. But what has gradually happened in the history of U.S.-Korea relations is that a plain military alliance established to protect South Korea from North Korea's declared aim of reunifying the peninsula under communist rule by force has step-by-step expanded and graduated and emerged into an important global partnership. During their Gyeongju summit meeting in November, President Bush and President No agreed to launch a high-level strategic dialogue called the Strategic Consultation for Allied Partnership, reflecting Korea's increasing international standing and its growing role on the world stage. In January, I attended the first of these consultations in Washington, and I'm happy to report that we had an excellent discussion on bilateral, regional, multilateral, and global issues. Now, our alliance really has taken on a global dimension. The United States and the Republic of Korea are working side by side to rebuild Iraq and Afghanistan as part of the international effort to bring freedom, peace, and democracy to those nations. We appreciate that Korea recently extended the mission of its troops in Iraq for an additional year. Alongside countries from across the globe, the Republic of Korea has also sent humanitarian assistance to regions hit hard by natural disasters, such as the tsunami in Southeast Asia, the earthquake in South Asia, and the hurricanes in the United States. Indeed, it's a measure of Korea's stature in the world today that the ROK contributed $30 million in aid to the victims of Hurricane Katrina. That assistance will help Americans who suffered from one of the worst natural disasters in our history, and we're very grateful. Here in Northeast Asia, our bilateral efforts to increase international cooperation and ensure stability are evident in our work together in the six-party talks. As President Bush and President No said in Gyeongju, we're committed to the peaceful resolution of the North Korean nuclear issue through diplomatic methods, but we will not tolerate a nuclear-armed North Korea. I hope that the talks will resume soon. It's in the interests of all countries and peoples, but most especially, it's in the interests of the North Koreans themselves that the DPRK shed the albatross of its nuclear programs and join the international community. Collective prosperity also depends on the health of each nation's people. One issue that urgently requires international attention is the threat that avian influenza could lead to a human pandemic. When the weather turns cold, we're all, to some extent, thinking about catching colds and flu, but the dangers posed by an influenza pandemic are quantitatively different, as the 1918 case graphically shows. Preventing a pandemic and minimizing the danger if one emerges will uniquely require international cooperation. Washington and Seoul are working together on this important issue. Both our countries are founding members of the International Partnership on Avian and Pandemic Influenza, launched by President Bush at the United Nations this past fall. Another measure of the strength of our alliance is the numbers of people-to-people exchanges. The U.S. Embassy processed over 400,000 visas in our fiscal year that ended in September 2005, and we hope to process as many as 500,000 in this fiscal year 2006. Our embassy issues more than 65,000 student visas, making Korea the third largest source of foreign students in the U.S. Since the terror attacks of September 11th, we've been required to institute additional security procedures, but wherever we can, we've worked to streamline the process. Moreover, in the Gyeongju summit, President Bush said the United States will work with Korea to develop a visa waiver program roadmap to assist Korea in meeting the requirements for membership in the program. Now, I personally am committed to this issue because, as you all know, our alliance is not just between governments, but between our two peoples, and I want to ensure that as many Koreans as possible have the opportunity to visit the United States. As I mentioned earlier, we're working closely with the Korean government to modernize our defense alliance to better meet our shared goals and better serve our peoples. We're planning to consolidate and relocate several bases away from population centers, returning some bases, such as Yongsan Garrison, to the Korean people, and transferring more missions and authority to Korea's armed forces. Over the next few years, we will spend roughly $11 billion to upgrade U.S. forces in the region to improve our ability to deal with any contingency on the peninsula or beyond. By moving our troops out of places like the heart of Seoul, we'll lay the groundwork for keeping our alliance strong for decades to come, and by improving the quality of our forces, we'll ensure the effectiveness of our deterrent for decades to come. So in short, U.S.-Korea relations are advancing in a positive way on several fronts. But today, on Valentine's Day, we're lucky enough to be able to meet and discuss how conclusion of a U.S.-Korea free trade agreement will help to complete our alliance and raise U.S.-Korea relations to the next level. So thanks again for the opportunity to address the benefits of a U.S.-Korea FTA, and now I look forward to your questions and comments.